started. Come on in.
Hello. And thank you for coming.
Yeah.
It's good it's not warm in here or anything.
It's cooled down a lot in here already,
Oh,
so it
really?
was hot earlier, yeah.
Too tough.
Yeah, so, and if you need a breather, the air vents are right there.
No, like I said, I really appreciate you guys coming in.
All right, so I know that you have your book, True Heart Intuitive Tarot. Was this inspired by your time filming The Craft, or were you interested in that realm before The Craft?
No, actually, I can see why people think I wrote that book because of The Craft and all that, but I always say The Craft script came to me because I already was into all that stuff. And in fact, it's a true story that 9 months before that script showed up, you know, at my door, my TV had broke, right? And this is back in the day, like I didn't have cable anyway, it was like 3 channels. But it broke, and I'm American, and I was like, I'm American, I like television. But then this little intuitive voice said, don't fix it, you have other things you're supposed to be doing. So I didn't fix my TV, and I really dug into my tarot studies, actually. Like, I just kept copious notebooks and grimoires and things. So I had been into it since I got my first deck at 8. That's the shorter version. So no, but when that script did hit my thing, I was like, I think I'm pretty prepared for this. I feel like I've spent, and I'm telling that story on purpose because sometimes you're preparing for things and you don't even know, right? Like, I didn't know that that script was going to show up, but the fact that I'd done all that work put me in the exact mindset to get that. So I'm always like, follow what your intuitive heart. You're like, oh, I'm going to start woodworking. Why? But you never know why down the line that is your calling.
Kind of like divine intervention.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and if you guys don't know, the book, it's got a set of tarot cards with it, 78 tarot cards, and it has 22 of her memoirs that she's put in there. So it's definitely something to check out.
It's a full how-to, like how to learn this. And by the way, like if any of you, I put this in specifically in the book for my friends and people who are super religious. I don't think there's anything out of alignment with Christ consciousness or whatever your particular belief is with tarot cards. They're literally there, as Carl Jung said, to tap into yourself and get in touch with your higher self. And more importantly, to look at your shitty lower self, but you don't have to tell anyone. It's just you, and that's a little less, it's a way to release shame.
Yeah. Okay, so in the film The Craft, since, you know, that's what everyone knows mostly from, yourself, Nev, and Firuza were portrayed as the best of friends. Does that still remain today?
Well, I mean, listen, they're all great. I think, though, when you're shooting a movie and you're playing best friends, it doesn't really mean you're best friends. Is the truth, you know? But I'm still friendly with all of them. In fact, I literally just got a text from Firuza, you know, at my table. So, yeah, you know, we all go in and out. You know, some people have kids, some don't. But they're a terrific group of women now.
Yeah. So at the time of filming The Craft, roles in Hollywood were few and far between for people of color. Do you feel that has changed for the better today?
Sure. You know, you can't say it hasn't because there's plenty of other, we see a lot more diversity on camera at this point. I would say now that I'm a grown-up lady, that's a different set of things that comes into play compared to being a 20-year-old and dealing with, oh, we don't want anyone black in this movie. Like with The Craft, it wasn't written for anyone brown. I just was like, I will be a witch in this movie. So I made that happen. And I think, again, there's definitely ageism that comes into play when you're more of a grown-up. But my thing is like, you can either be so upset and whine about everything that comes your way, or you can go, oh, okay, now I'm older and the roles are a little different, or I'll write a book. I'll use my other talents. I'm always sort of looking for the angle, I suppose. You know, when people are like, no, I'm like, really? Watch me. So that's just kind of my philosophy. But I think that comes out of, to be honest, being a mixed black person in the 90s trying to get acting work and being told, no, you can't read for this, no, no, no. All the time, all I ever heard was no, and I was like, really? So now I do tell some of my friends to think like a 90s mixed black chick. Just Don't take no for an answer.
So recently you just did Harlem.
I did.
And it was,
wait, that's a show about 4 women who live in Harlem. Yeah.
and it's actually a great show. It's
super cute.
Super, super great. You play Amy. Amy runs a plant store.
She's so prepared.
I actually watched the show before I even knew that I was a part of this. So I was a fan of the show before all this got started. And I love Amy's character and how like fluid she is, and she's like all about her plants and trying to help. Is it Ty grow and and develop this relationship and all of this in the show. How proud are you of Harlem and the topics of Black women with their experiences and representation in the queer community is going?
I love that show. I really do. It's, if you haven't seen it, it's a show on Amazon Prime, and it's kind of like, I suppose, Sex and the City-esque, right? But it is very of this moment right now. It is what younger people are up to in this 2023 moment. Because I was saying to someone like in the 90s, we didn't know we were in a moment. You're just living your life, but that was a moment, just like now is a moment for what is happening with young people. So I love what they've done with it. Tracy Oliver, she wrote Girls Trip. She's one of the producers on it, and she just offered it to me, which was really sweet. And that's why I say it's of the moment now, especially when we're talking about sexuality and gender identity. By the way, I was on TikTok. I know, I'm old and I'm on TikTok. I kind of love it, actually. It's like YouTube and Instagram. But there's this little French girl, and she looked at the Pride rainbow sticker, and she goes, LGBT quoi? And I went, oh my God, that's how I'm going to say it from now on.
Yeah.
LGBT quoi? I was like, that's so perfect. So I think they do terrific things with that, whatever side you're on. Doesn't really matter because it's about seeing, right? What else is out there? Doesn't mean you have to do it, but it's just we're acknowledging that other people exist outside of our concerned norms. But by the way, the other thing about TikTok is everyone is neurodivergent on there. And so finally I was like, listen, if everyone's neurodivergent, then no one is divergent. If everyone is neurodivergent, you know what I'm saying? Like if everyone's that, then it's actually the norm. But that's a conversation for another day. You can take up with your teenagers, like you.
So you've had some appearances on 3 of the biggest shows in the 90s. You were on The Cosby Show, that's where you made your debut, right? You did Beverly Hills 90210.
I did.
You also were a part of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
I was.
Yeah, so were you going to auditions? Were you seen somewhere? How did all those roles come about, and how did that help prepare you or lead you into the craft?
I think I was auditioning, like I had agents, and you had to go. You went in person back then, and you read maybe up to 5 times sometimes for the same role. 90210, they just offered me because I had read for a couple other parts that I didn't get, and then that's what they would do, is if they liked you, they'd give you some other smaller part. Fresh Prince, I definitely auditioned for. I feel like all of that, it all feeds into one, because auditioning, I don't know if any of you are actors out there, but auditioning is its own set of skill. Meaning there are some people who are just amazing at auditioning, and then they get on set and they crumple because they only know that one thing. And then there's other people who are terrible at auditioning, but they're terrific on set. So my goal was always to try to like split the difference and try to be decent at both, because auditions are, for me, I'm an anxious person. We're always really nerve-wracking, to be honest. So now we film them at home for the most part, which sounds great because you can send in, I did it, now I can do it again, and do it again until I get it right. But, you know, I have to like dismantle a wall to shoot on, and like I'm my own, I find it a pain in the ass. Because I kind of miss going into, the thing about going in and auditioning in a room, it's kind of like this. You're looking at people, you're feeling their energy. So that's kind of fun, actually, than being at home and filming it. But like I said, I like that I've been able to work in a diverse bunch of different kind of programs.
Do you feel that now that the audition process is at home, that you are more critical? I mean, most people are more critical of themselves, so that you look at your audition and you go, oh, I did that wrong. So then you redo the scene again to send it out, and then you send it out and you're like, I should have sent the original and I refilmed it.
No, actually, the beauty of filming it yourself is you can, what I do is I'll do 3, 4 takes in a row, period. I don't stop and look at each one. I'll just do 4 takes in a row. My friends and I have a shorthand if we're doing a scene and like, you know, cut, they'll go, act better. And so the next take, you're like, all right, I'm gonna step up your game and act better. That's our shorthand. You would never say that to someone new because it might crumple them, but you know, I'm like, I know what you mean, act better, yeah, I get it. So I'll do 4 takes in a row, and then I kind of let my manager help pick the one to send in because I don't really have a frame of reference for what is good or not, to be honest. I'm like, you pick it. So it's freeing in that respect, because if you go in and fumble your lines because you're nervous in front of the crowd, now that's alleviated, you know? I think there's bonuses to both. I kind of miss some of the old school ways a little bit, but I love that, you know, you could live in Atlanta or Idaho and audition for a movie now and have the same shot as anyone else in Hollywood.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It opens it up. I mean, social media technology has definitely grown and changed.
Absolutely.
For all of that. So another fantastic character that you have played is the legendary Mary Jane of Half Baked. I love the giggle. I love the giggle. So, and I'm sure you've been asked a million times, but how baked was everybody when filming Half Baked?
Not at all. Like, honestly, I know it seems like, oh, we're all so hot. No, we're shooting a movie. Like, whatever I do in my off time, which, you know, we'll just say whatever I do, that's for off time, you know what I mean? Because the thing is, like, let's say even with, which is legal now, I don't want to go in with red eyes and go up on my lines. That's my truth on that. There might be other people I know who can, and that's fine, you know, who can do whatever they want, drink, smoke. I've worked with them all, and they're great on camera. Me personally, I like to use other things to explore the script at home and do my homework with, and my imagination is triggered by whatever things may be around, or not, but you know, that was all fake green stuff. I'm not, again, what people were doing off hours is another story. But also in that movie, I was like, Reed, it's terrible, so, you know. Which it's not. I mean, it is for some people, though. That's also the other thing. Like, I would never want to push it because if you're schizophrenic or different things that can be triggered and exacerbated by that. I am not. I happen to like it better than a lot of medicines out there. But really, everybody is specific. Just like some people drink and all of a sudden they're, you know, I don't drink because I have allergic reactions to liquor. So everyone has to judge by their own body is what I know.
So while filming Half Baked, what is your favorite memory of filming that movie? And what is the one part of that movie that you just like couldn't get past, or the scene, or any instance that you were just like having a hard time with that movie?
That whole movie was super fun. that's the truth. Like, there wasn't really any hard stuff. Tamara Davis, who was married to a Beastie Boy, was the director of it, and I'd worked with her on CB4, which was an early Chris Rock movie, so I already knew her. And I think the funnest part as a New Yorker was being like, how does Toronto double for New York? This does not look like New York City. But really, for me, the thing that struck me is I'd never done a movie where I was primarily the only girl. Like, Laura Silverman was in it too, but I didn't have any scenes with them, so it was like having 4 or 5 brothers around, and it was actually, this is what I thought at the time, and I feel terrible saying this, but it's kind of true. A lot less drama than 4 or 5 women. And that's not always the case. I'm a girl's girl, but I mean, there wasn't any like, well, what's your costume? And how many lines do you have today? And that kind of stuff that does permeate, or did back then. I think it's probably better now. So it was kind of fun to work with a bunch of boys and just be one of the girls. They all had girlfriends or married, so it was like, you know what I'm saying, as women, there wasn't any of that like, are we, aren't, we're not. We're all good, we're just hanging out. So I think the camaraderie was my favorite part of that movie. Also, it was just kind of fun to play someone who's much more uptight than I am. Like,
out of character.
Yeah, I mean, it's within my wheelhouse, but at the same time, I can't imagine saying to anyone, like, what are you doing? Are you drinking that liquor? That's like, anyway, like, that seems so Virgo. Sorry, Virgos.
What was a scene in The Craft that you struggled with? Was there like one particular scene where you're like, and it could be just like getting the scene down, having your lines, your emotions.
Honestly, I think the rehearsals were trickier than the actual filming because they had all done, I'd done the Chris Rock movie, which was technically a studio movie, but the other girls had worked more and were like, wait, work more, and I'm like, I know. So I was a little like intimidated in the rehearsal process, right? We're rehearsing and I said my line, whatever it was, like, what are you doing? And Firuza turns around and goes, is she gonna say it that way? And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And then, but like, here's the other thing, is I didn't get indignant because the line had come out of my mouth in a weird way. So she wasn't wrong, you know what I mean? Like, that was rude to do. But my thing about getting upset is like, why would I get defensive when it's actually like, she's right, that came out of my mouth wrong. I wouldn't have said it the way and she's one of my best friends now, so I say all this to her face, you know? I think just the rehearsal process and realizing like, okay, these are three completely new actors I don't know, and we have to act like we're best friends. Like, how do I do that? And then luckily, Nev and I just hit it off from the second we looked at each other, and then we had each other during the film, which I think helped. But as far as hard scenes, no, I'll be honest, the only scene, I didn't have a hard time with it, but the scene in the bathroom where like, you know, what's up, Robin, Dan, what's her name, Sarah, what are you doing? Like, why don't you leave the planet? You know, you should leave the school, the country, the planet. I'll be 100% honest, I didn't really know how I was gonna play that. I think I was gonna play it a certain way, and then we get in the scene, and they're all like, you know, and I was like, oh shit, I should revamp my take on this scene right now. But that's what you do, you know what I mean? Like, you rehearse something at home, and then acting is reacting, so you have to be able to move within the moment and go, oh, okay, it has a different feel than how I pictured it at home. You can't just do what you rehearsed at home. You have to be able to roll with whatever the new energy is. That's literally what acting is. So, you know, I'm trying to, you know what the hardest part was? That everyone else had parents and I didn't. For me, personally, I'm like, why everyone got parents and the black girl doesn't? We shot a scene with my parents and they cut them. And everyone else's parents ended up. So things like that I think if you're not me, you're like, what do you mean? I wouldn't even know that happened. Or, you know, no, I really wasn't invited on the publicity junket. And that would never happen today. You would never exclude. Because they said, we don't think black people are gonna see this movie. So I wasn't invited on the publicity junket. And that just would, thank goodness it's all these years later, and that wouldn't happen today. But I would say that was hard on, not just my ego, but if we're being really frank, my pocketbook. Because if you're doing the publicity junket, then people are seeing you on that, and then they're hiring you, and you're at the MTV Movie Awards on stage, not like me in the audience, while the other three actresses were upstage. So that's the kind of racism stuff that was going on back then. It wasn't fun to live through. Why am I harping on it now? No other reason than to say we have come, per your first question. We have come further, because that would just never happen today. Right. So that's I think the toughest thing, because the actual filming of the movie, we had a truck full of candy. It was the candy truck. It was amazing.
Dang. Where's our candy truck?
I'm saying we had nothing to complain about. Like, we got to go to the Sony store and buy Sony stuff at a big discount, and then, you know, go to my Star Wagon trailer. And then back then, it took a lot. Now we film on digital. That was shot on film, so you're like, oh, it's gonna take 3 hours to light this scene. I'm gonna go to my trailer and watch a movie. Now it's much quicker because of digital, so I actually really appreciated the languid, luxurious pace that film had, to be honest, because everything was broken up in ways that each beat became super important. That said, there's nothing like being able to jam out a movie in 3 weeks now, so there's benefits to both. But I do miss the way film makes skin look. You know, digital's kind of harsh, I think, depending on who's filming you.
And then which techniques
And
they're
then which,
using.
yeah, which technique.
Yeah.
But I love that, I'd like to think that eventually there'll be more sweat. No, there'll be more independent films coming out of people like you all in here, because now the tools are here. Anyone can kind of make a film. Now, can you make it look good? Can you make it sound good? Because sound is really important in all those things. I don't know. But I know that it's much more feasible to create your own art because of our advances. So, and I mean, before AI takes over, at least, right?
So you have, or how difficult do you find it to keep your personal life and public appearance separate in the world of social media nowadays?
I think I'm kind of like who I am. One thing about me is, even, you know, back in the day to now, my friends have always said, like, you're exactly the same. You haven't really changed much. Like, you're always who you are, whether you're in a movie or not in a movie. So I like that about myself. I will say social media, like, you guys are probably much more savvy than me, but you gotta be a little careful. Like, I stayed off it for a long time because I got a real stalker. Kept showing up and swatted my house, and then showed up at my house with instruments and things, and I had to go to court. And so that was after, like, the MySpace days, right? And so I was like, how do I re-engage? Because I do want to be on social media, but that scared the F out of me. And I'm an extroverted introvert, right? So I can be like this, but I like quiet time at home, and I got to stare at the wall to decompress. So that was all overwhelming for me. Now I'll get litigious on your ass so fast if you stalk me, and things like that. But I think it's important not to give everything away about oneself on social media, right? I do think I'm truthful to who I am, though I don't think it's a facade, like, not at all. I think it's genuinely a side of me. But I don't always talk about my relationships or things like that, and I think that's an okay boundary to have. You know, it's really about your own boundaries that you decide is fine for you. And it doesn't mean I wouldn't put things like that up there, but in the end, like, I used to put shots of my house, and somebody on Twitter kept saying, now I know the layout of your house, and now I know, and all that felt creepy. So again, my pictures tend to be not of my living room, so everyone knows my layout. That's my truth.
Yeah, I think that with the advances of social media and how technical people can get, and they can back search on Google now, and
you can zoom in if you have a piece of mail in the background, like that can have your address on it. I just think it's about being smart and careful, right? But it's also trickier now with parasocial relationships, you know, because my stalker was like, you need me to save you. And they truly believe that, right? And so I have a lot of empathy also for mental illness, because that's something else when someone has convinced themselves that I need you to save me. That's a whole head trip. But yeah, I think I took about 5 or 6 years off, and now I'm trying to post again. But, you know, it's slow going, I think. It's just tricky as a woman, you know, as a female, to realize the size-wise. I'm more vulnerable. And then because of the craft, you know, there are definitely people who are like, I want to do magic on you. And I'm like, I'm good. I put up a picture of my throwback from, like, my first headshot, and somebody on Instagram wrote, you know, I can tell there's an X attached to you, and da-da-da-da. I was like, that picture was from the year of our Lord, 1902. Pretty sure whoever it is not attached to me anymore. So just have to watch, because people can look at your feed and go, I know how to manipulate you. Based on your posts, I can see what's important to this person. So, you know, eyes open, eyes wide shut.
What is something that you learned when getting into tarot and learning more of, like, the magic side of things and that realm, that you would tell someone who's starting out to, like, look for, to be more intuitive, to listen to themselves? Like, where would you guide them?
I would say, like, most people, not everyone, but most people have, like, that inner dialogue. Some people don't. I don't understand that. But, like, the inner voice. And I just started when I was very young. I sort of pay attention to things. And I think I tell this story in the book, though. But, like, once I moved to LA, I was in Whole Foods, or Mrs. Gooch's, which it used to be. And I was grabbing some pre-made food, and I hear, my intuition comes in different ways. I can definitely develop it with tarot and other things, but basically, I'll just be sitting there. It's the same gut intuition our ancestors use. You can call it all different names. Some are airy-fairy, some are really basic, right? But if I just say your gut intuition or your sixth sense, then it doesn't freak people out as much. But anyway, so I'm at Whole Foods, and I hear this sort of leaf rustling sound. That's how it kind of comes. So clairaudient, when I'm tired, I'm such a New Yorker. Clairaudience, and so I'll hear sort of a rustling, and then I heard something literally say, "Don't take the first samosa." And I took the first samosa, and I got home, and there was a bug in it. So that was really me going, all right, you need to start listening, because it's that same thing that told your ancestors, like, don't go that way, because there's a big cat waiting that way to, jump on you and eat you. Just whatever it is, don't think it's that mystical, to be honest. I think it's just accessing something that we've kind of buried. Like, we watch a lot of TV, we do things that bury all that energy. So I would say, if you get a chance, go stick your feet in nature too. Like, I do like grounding. I think people call it all different weird names, but it's just what we did as a kid, right? You run around if you're lucky and you have some grass. Even in New York City, though, we had patches of grass, and I like to go outside, take my shoes off. I think that kind of helps with intuition. Also, my other piece of advice is, you know how you will have something you want to figure out, and you'll ask every single one of your friends for advice? That means you already know the answer. You're just looking for, validation from other people, but you already know, and you're probably trying to talk yourself into the other way of doing it, even though you know the right thing. Because again, I do believe if you have to ask 20 people, like, are you asking for advice or are you asking for attention, right? And it's okay, I like attention. But I just think as I've grown up, I've found I Occam razor a lot of things, which is to say, what is the simplest answer before I go, it's mystical, it's magical, like Occam razor, that shit. And then beyond that, there is a lot of things floating around. I've always, as a little kid, been able to pick up on energy, or with my parents' friends, said the exact one thing that crumpled them. Which is not a great skill for a child. You're like, I just said one thing, and this adult is like, but that's my intuitive sense was picking up on what was going on with them. So I lean into that now, because whether you're a CEO in a boardroom, it can only help to be able to intuitively pick up what's happening. So I look at it that way, and everyone Bruce and I argue about this, I'll leave you on that. I think everyone has the ability, and she's like, no, they don't. And I'm like, yes, they do. It's just undeveloped, perhaps, or something people haven't thought about, but it's there for the taking for everyone.
Or they're not open to it.
Right, or you're not open to it, which again is fine, like whatever anyone wants to do. But I really like tarot for helping me assess what is happening, what would be the right thing for me to do. And I do find it to be kind of accurate. Why? Because it's coming from me. My reaction to those images on the card, my visceral reaction is going to be completely different than your visceral reaction, because you have your life experiences. So it's coming from you, it's going to give you some insight too, which is so much better. Like, people on TikTok are like letting strangers read their tarot cards, and I'm like, I don't get that. Like, who are they reading for? Everyone? No one? So I'm always like, learn to read your own. It's really inexpensive, and it's super self-soothing. I think a lot of us were not taught to self-soothe when we were little children, or our needs weren't met, right? So tarot is one way to kind of calm your own ass down.
Okay, so we're gonna move on with one more question, and then we're gonna start taking some questions from the audience. So if you guys have anything, be prepared. We're gonna have John come forward, and he'll line up with you and start asking some questions in just a second.
Somebody please ask me something.
I have a random question for you, completely different than probably most, but what are your top 2 favorite cities or states or countries to film in, and what are your worst 2 that you have filmed in?
Oh, I shot 2 movies in Minnesota and Minneapolis, which is a great city, actually. So I don't hate the city. What I hate are their million lakes and their mosquitoes that are the size of this table. Like, I woke up with 3 bites on my face while filming, and so then I had to cheat away so the camera couldn't see it. So it's a great city, though. But that's not my favorite place to film. Meanwhile, my friends are like, I just got back from filming in Prague, And I'm like, Albany, you know? So I would like to go to more exotic places to film. Was that the question?
Yeah, your two worst and your two favorite.
Oh, and I love, the first time I went to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, like I knew my way around without a map. It felt like a past life thing. I was just like, this is my town. And not just because of the partying at all. I love an old medieval city. And those cities in Belgium and the Netherlands are like that. So Amsterdam's one of my favorite places. Also, Santorini, Greece. It looks like those postcards. It's stunning. I would say if anyone, you ever get a chance, good ticket to go, do not hesitate to go to Greece, depending on their crumbling economy, but you know, it's beautiful.
All right, so do we have any questions in the audience?
One there and one there.
Yeah. So, yeah, we have one right here.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Sunny. My mom showed me the movie The Craft, and we have a big bond over it.
Oh.
And I was wondering, what is your favorite scene that you filmed or that you were proud to be a part of in that film?
I think I really liked the Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board scene. All of them were fun, by the way, but that one, we had filmed all the exterior stuff for 2 months at different locations, and now for that shot, we were in a soundstage at Sony. So they built a 2-story house inside a soundstage, and there was a hydraulic press, you know, underneath me. So I think that was really cool because it felt like old school Hollywood movie maker, you know, like that black and white movies, that old school kind of felt a little like that. And that was just fun because I had no idea what to expect. And I think the last line, you gotta try it, that's an ad lib. And to this day, I'm like, was I in the moment, or was I telling them they gotta try the hydraulic? I don't really know, but I know it worked. So that was super fun. Thanks for your question.
Okay, we had one up here.
I think I have a follow-up question. You mentioned they weren't letting you do the promotion for the movie because they didn't think black people would want to go see it. But was there any discussion that if you were promoting the movie, then black people would go see it?
No. Because it was the 90s. No, there was no discussion. There was no discussion. Like, that's so optimistic that there was a discussion. There was no discussion, you know. Again, and when you think about the times, there had been, some of you older and Gen Xers know this, but like there'd been all those John Hughes movies, right? Big teen movies. No black people in those, and the one Asian guy literally was like long duck dong, and then they made fun of him the whole time. So that was de rigueur at that time. Right? So coming out, and I like John Hughes movies. I'm not even, you know, knocking them. I'm just saying that's where we're coming out. And then the movies that were floating around at that time were like Boys in the Hood, and you know, A Gun, and The Hood for black people. And so it was just, again, a different time with no discussion. I understand your question though, because you would think, well, maybe we should include her because we could get another audience. But again, you know, I get their concern back then, because to this day, if I tell, like, depending on where I am, if I'm in the South and I'm like, hey, fellow black person, I wrote a tarot book, they're like, oh my God. So, you know, it's not unbased in something that people might not see it, but, you know, we're not a monolith and nobody likes being lumped in. And I think the hardest thing for me with that was some of the other girls in the movie were like, well, it's because we're famous. And I was like, yeah, well, how do you think you make people famous? You include them in the press. If I'm not included in the press, I have no chance of becoming something bigger. And you're only famous because they put you in a magazine, too. Like, I'm in movies, I'm in stuff. So, to this day, I would still say that's an interesting topic that I think not everyone understands. Like when I had to be to be included in a convention, you know, I had all the other 3 girls were at this convention, and my convention guy kept saying, hey, she wants to go, and they were like, what? And so I said, fine, I'm going on Twitter. And I did. And I don't know that that was good or bad, but I just felt like if you're having the other 3, and I say I want to come, and you'll have the first reunion since the screening, since the premiere, and you're not interested in that, What does that say? Is it, because that's money. Money always talks. So if you're not interested in the money that that's going to bring in, I got to look at what else it might be. You know, that's how I look at it. I'm not saying that was their motivation, but I'm saying this is how it plays out. You know, and then I had a couple of the other girls in the movie were like, well, no, I'm there because of this, and she's there because of that. And I was like, stop. You know, like I dealt with that in the 90s. You explaining to me why I shouldn't be upset. I'm not in the mood anymore, and I'm too old. So, you know, that's one side of it, but the other side, to round back to something great, is I'm so glad I was in that movie. I love the subject matter. I think it is so fun and so interesting, and Fruz and I giggle sometimes that we did help bring witchcraft to the forefront, because coming out of the 80s and late and early 90s we were just coming out of satanic panic, you know, where you'd have to read about that if you're very young, but everything was attributed to satanic panic. And so coming out of that, we showed a different side, because we also were in 70s and 80s crone witches, hags, right? Here were 4 attractive women, and I also think the analogy of burgeoning female sexuality and witchcraft are kind of a perfect matchup, you know? And male sexuality, same thing. Like once you hit it in your teens and you realize like what you can do with just a look or a thing, you know, that's the analogy too of the witchcraft, is how overwhelming it is when all of that hits us as younger people.
Do we have any other questions? Oh. We're gonna go to the back and then we'll come up the front.
I was just kind of curious, besides what you're doing now, has there been a point in which you thought, man, I'd really like to work with him or her again on something, or even at the other side, if it's somebody that you haven't worked with yet, that you might think, man, I could really knock it out of the park with this one. If I really work with this one, who would that be?
Oh, I mean, us actors think that all the time, by the way. There are so many people. Like, I would love to work with Quentin Tarantino. I don't know if he's stayed retired or if he's coming back, but a lot of my friends have worked with him. He's a tough director. I'm not saying it'd be fun, but I love his films. So that's someone I'd still love to work with, like a Scorsese, you know, all those people. I went to a Vanity Fair Oscar dinner party and talked to George Lucas all night, and I was like, I really love George Lucas. We didn't talk. Here's my little tip too. If you're ever at a thing, right, and there's an actor or a director, and maybe you just, we didn't talk about acting. He's a director, I'm an actor. We already know that, right? So we just talked about life, because that's common. Everybody has living experiences in common. I don't think we would have talked all night if I'd been like, I really want to be in your movie. He'd be like, oh, a fan, you know, and move off. So my little tip is like, if you ever see someone, just approach them, you know, you can approach people, and you're just as important. The reason everyone who came up to my table and they said, you're the reason movies are still being seen, it really is you guys, right? Like, sure, me, I'm important, me, yeah, but you're the reason all these movies are alive, and the posters are still out there, and they're still being shown. So you're an equal part of it, is what I'm trying to say. Never underestimate your own importance.
Okay, another question. I know we have a couple up in the front, and then we have another one in the back again. Right here.
Merci for your question. We're getting to you, girl.
Hey, so I'm Craig from Tapping No Cabin Podcast. We talked already, and I have actually 2 questions. One is the craft legacy. I don't know if you saw her or was a fan.
I don't know her. Nice gown.
I was gonna say we saw the ending credits and seen the original, one of the original cast members being in there, Nancy Downs. And I want to know, do you think they're gonna make a part 3, and maybe will you be in there?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. We had a lot of meetings. Like, my story on that one is we had a lot of meetings about that movie, and then they were like, we don't need you guys. So, like I said, nice gowns. How'd that work out?
And then my last question was, also I'm a Virgo, so that was funny.
They're the hardest working sign, though. They work hard.
I was gonna say, yeah, I do appreciate you opening up doors for all the other women who play black witches, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm also a fan of like Vampire Diaries, stuff like that. So pretty awesome that you opened those doors. But I also want to say, are you a fan of anything else that's nerdy, like Marvel, DC, things like that?
Oh, you know what? I gotta say, I used to be a bigger fan of Marvel and DC. I'm so super saturated at this point that and so are you, right? Like, it's been 10 years. I get it. You're superheroes. I actually I would really love a small movie with a story and a plot at this point and a emotion-driven thing. Like, that's just me, though. I know a lot of you really love the superhero stuff, and so do I. But I think I'm just super saturated with it all. But nerdy stuff, I am a nerd. Like, I'm literally at home teaching myself to play keyboard so that I can understand my bass guitar better while learning, you know, I just got a new photography. Like, I like that I can entertain myself with nerdy things. I'm an avid reader, too. Like, I read a lot. But I don't know. I know that's not the nerdy answer you want. I'd be like, oh, I love Spider-Man, but there's 20 of them. Which... But by the way, if you're producing a Spider-Man movie, I love them. I love them so much.
Right up here.
Like, so much.
Right here. Yeah.
My question's not that deep, but
Did you, do I need this? Can you hear me?
yeah, I'll repeat it.
Sorry, did you have dive experience?
So the question was, did I have dive experience for the craft? Girl, no. I got first. Well, it's a body double when she's going into the water. It's literally a diver that they found. I was scared just walking out onto the plank because I'm not. And I got out to the end and was like, oh my God, I'm gonna fall. That's what a wimp I am. I would say the interesting thing to the 3 black people who are in the audience listen, the girl who played my stunt diver, and she seemed really nice, but her whole thing was, they had to put dark makeup on me to match you. They had to put and I was like, yeah, because you're playing me. And she was like, well, it's darker than I am. And I was like, yeah, because it's not about you. So she was a sweet girl, but I got kind of like, it's not about you after a while, because I was like, I don't care that you're 2 shades darker or lighter. Like, I could go out in the sun right now and I'm 5 shades darker. So she seemed more hung up on color. That's why I said it was for the 3 people. Anyway, and you. Yeah. So, you know, I think when it comes to that, I don't know, I like to live in the moment, each moment, everything. Did you have a second part to that?
No, it was pretty much it.
Okay.
I've always wondered, because you can't tell sometimes if it's a stunt double or not. And I watched that movie 1,000 times, and it looks like you all the way down.
No, listen, at that time, they said they had to search long and hard to find a brown diver. There's a very small pool of brown divers to choose from. But they found her. And actually, my character had another storyline of being bulimic. When it was an Anglo character, she was bulimic. And I kind of wish they kept that in, because in the end, when you think about what is Rochelle's issue? Yeah. She's burnt, she's crazy, she's was suicidal. What's Rochelle's issue? What, that she's black? Because that's what I remember thinking back then, was they think my blackness is a problem. But now that it's all these years later, I'm like, what I get is it's not, and I think it's deeper than what they thought. I think they did think my blackness was a problem. But what I think now is that storyline stands up, right? Like, unfortunately, 20 years later, people are still being, or 30, whatever it is, people are still being bullied for many reasons, sexuality, color, all these different things. So I do think it holds up. I just, like I said at the time, and I was like, I don't, what's my problem? That I don't like races? That seems to be not my problem. So that's to me still a little nebulous in the original movie.
All right, so we have time for one more question.
She had her hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want the mic?
I'm good.
Okay.
But that kind of actually leads me into my question, which I wanted to ask about your time working on the horror noir documentary, and if that kind of solidified or changed how you view perceptions of race by others, especially working with such rich material, both from Tananarive Due and Robin Means Coleman, who wrote the actual text book.
So her question is about the Shudder documentary Horror Noir. I don't know if you all have seen it. It's very good if you get a chance. It basically is focused in on movies, horror movies that had people of color in them, right? Which isn't every movie from back in the day, but it's really, it was originally a book by Robin Means Coleman, and we did it as a documentary, and then there's also a scripted, like, anthology horror series that I'm in based off it. But the documentary itself is very eye-opening. In the end, a lot of times, and I had known these things because I am an avid reader, but if you don't know, then you don't really understand what the analogy of the monster is, right? And how that is an analogy for the presence of blackness in your town, or, you know, the one black person who just moved in, and they are represented maybe by the creature from the Black Lagoon, and that is, you know. So go watch a documentary, because I can't break it, and we gotta wrap this up, right? And I can't break it down in such short time. But it doesn't matter if you're not black, right? Because you could be Swedish and have the same kind of things that were layered on your people. It's not specific, but you will learn about that in this movie. And, you know, I can't say enough good things about that documentary. And basically, up until the time I was in the craft, like, again, if you were in a horror movie, if I was in anything, my #1 line was, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because this is not about me. Like, I am not the main character. I am not the blonde in peril. Are you okay? So just sort of dissecting the friend roles too, from the leads and the things, and just check it out if you get a chance. It's free. It's streaming on Amazon Prime, I think, if you have Shudder. Maybe you have to pay for. How many of you have Shudder, by the way? Oh my God, yay, that's so great to see, because, you know, back a few years ago, not as many people had it. So it's a tight 85 minutes, it's tight. It's a tight little piece, and it's funny as well. It's very entertaining and funny, so do check that out.
All right, you guys, thank you, Rachel, for doing our panel. She's gonna head back to her table in about 10 minutes, give her some time, and make sure to stop by and say hi. And
yeah, please come by and say hi. And also, thank you so much for showing up to this very hot, moist room we're in.
yes.
I really appreciate it.